Hi, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed your long weekend. In the next few weeks, we are all going to be taking the ACT, so I wanted to give you some tips and tricks that will help you to get through this test. So, I have 4 or 5 tips for you that we're going to go through to make your life a little easier when you take the test. So, my first tip that I'm going to give you is that this test is hard. And this is a test that is meant to test what you know, but it doesn't count off for things that you don't know. But I do want you to know that this test is meant to be hard, and there's things on here that you're not going to know how to do, and I don't want that to stress you out. So just do your best. The test is hard. Don't stress out. It deleted the whole thing. This test is hard. Don't stress. Do your best. Because the good news is, and that's going to be my next tip. This test is hard. Don't stress. Okay, number 2. There are 60 questions on this test, but you only have to get half right to meet benchmark. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through the test, and I want you to look for the 30 questions that you think look the easiest, and I want you to do those first. And once you get done with those that you feel confident in knowing how to do, then you can go back and look at some of the ones that look a little harder. So again, don't start at number 1 and go all the way to number 60 and waste your time in the middle on things that are really hard. I want you to look through the test, look for the 30 first questions. That doesn't make sense. Look for the 30 questions that look easiest to you. And the questions that look easiest to you may be different than what look easiest to me. But this is all about you and what you know how to do. So I want you to, because you only have to get 30 of the 60 questions right to meet benchmark, you look for those 30 that you feel like you can do the best on, and those are the ones that I want you to spend the most time on. Don't get stuck on a question in the middle of the test and waste all your time, because this test is 60 questions long and you have 60 minutes. So you really only have 1 minute per question. So you need to look for the 30 that you know how to do. And if you spend 2 minutes on each of those 30 questions and you get all those right, you'll still meet benchmark. And on that note, tip number 3 is for the questions that you don't know how to do, the questions you're not sure of, I want you to pick a letter and stick with that letter to answer the questions. Pick a letter and stick with it. And this applies if you're trying to do a problem and you just can't get it to make sense for you, or if it's almost time and your time's almost up and you're not close to being done, pick a letter and stick with it. There's been a long myth or urban legend that letter C is the most popular on the ACT. It's really an even mix of A, B, C, and D. But if you've done your 30 questions and time is almost up, go through and pick one letter, and chances are you'll get a few of them right just by guessing. But that's a really good tip if you're not going to get done with the test, or if you're just really stumped and you don't know how to do something. Pick a letter and stick with the same letter for the rest of the test. So the next one is that we have taught you the ways to do a lot of different equations, and some of those equations take a long time to solve. But the ACT is awesome because it gives you 5 options of answers. So what you need to do is you need to use the answers to substitute back into the problem. A lot of times we're trying to solve for x, and when we find x, we put it back into the equation to check to make sure it's right. Well, they're giving us all the options of x, and we can just put that number back into the equation and see if it makes sense. So use the answers to substitute into the problems to save time. Substitute into the problems to save time. So if you have an equation and it says solve for x, and it's a big long equation, but you've got 5 answers, pick 1 or 2 and try to solve it, and use your options to figure out which one's right, rather than going through and solving a really long equation. Another tip with that too is to eliminate answers that don't make sense. So a lot of times the ACT will give 1 or 2 options that are they're called outliers because maybe one's really, really big and one's really, really small. And most of the time, those aren't the right answers. If you can just look at it and know that something isn't right just by looking at the problem and not doing any math, you've saved yourself some time. So you're going to eliminate answers that don't make sense. So if you had a problem that was like, what is the value of 9 to the x power, and 14 was an answer, well, we know that 9 squared is 81, and 9 to the first power is 9. We know that 9 to the x power wouldn't be 14, so we can eliminate that 14 because it just doesn't make sense. And again, a lot of times if there's a number that's a whole lot bigger or a whole lot smaller than any of the other answers, that one's going to be one that we can go ahead and eliminate. So those are my 5 tips for you. Again, the test is hard. Don't stress. Do your best. You only have to get half of the questions right to meet benchmark. So look for the 30 questions that look the easiest to do and stick to those, and then go back and work the questions that look harder. And the questions you're not sure of, or if you don't get to them, pick a letter and stick with it. Use your answers to substitute into the problems to save time, and eliminate answers that don't make sense. If you do these 5 things, you're going to do a whole lot better on the test than people who don't know these tips and tricks, because they're going to be wasting time, stressing, and trying to answer every question in a row, and not picking a letter and sticking with it. They're going to be all over the place, and you're going to rock this test. The other thing that I want to do, I guess I need to add number 6 on here. Number 6, I want to tell you to use your resources. So if you have a calculator, use it to check your answers. Even if you're sure, not use your answers, use your resources. So use your calculator. Use the tools that we have taught you in class on your calculator. We also want you, if you have a reader, to use your reader and tell your reader that you don't need to go in order, and ask them to read the questions to you, because sometimes hearing it out loud will help you understand it better. If you have extended time, use your time. Don't rush. Sometimes you have to advocate for yourself and ask for the help you need. We can't help you on the test, but we can read things to you if you get a reader. And again, we don't have to go number 1 through number 60. You can go through the test first and look for the ones you want to read, and you can say, hey, Miss Roby, read number 15 to me. Even if that's the first question you want to do, if that's the one that looks easy to you and you want to start there to build your confidence, start with number 15. It does not matter. You do not have to do this test number 1 through 60. That is not a rule. Do it the way that feels most comfortable to you, that you feel like you are going to be able to answer the most questions correctly. So now that you've done this, I want you to open up today's problems on the ACT or the Google form, and you have 10 questions to answer. So we're going to again practice, and you're going to look for the 5 of those 10 that look the easiest to you, and you're going to answer those 5. So if you don't watch the video, you're not going to know that you only have to do 5 questions. So I'll know who watched the video and who didn't. So again, you only have to do the 5 that look the easiest to you. So with that being said, go do your Google form, and we'll see you in class on Tuesday. Actually, I won't see you. I'll see you later in the week because I'm reading ACT. But I'll miss you guys, and I know you're going to do well on this test, and I'll see you soon.